Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Today we're going to be looking at the idea of regular present tense AR verbs and their conjugation. Now we'll get into what that means in just a moment, but essentially we're talking about who's doing a specific action. Now if that's the case, we need to refresh ourselves on our subject pronouns, and that's what you see on the screen in front of you. And we have our subject pronoun, we have yo, which you'll remember means I, tú means you, él means he, ella, she, usted is you formal, you're talking directly to somebody of a higher position than you, nosotros, nosotras, that's we, ellos, ellas, they, and ustedes is either y'all, that you all form, or if you're talking to two people in a formal manner. We want to keep in mind that we use those subject pronouns to talk about who does an action, though we could also use somebody's name, and that would go down here in this form, or if it's more than one person, we could use their names to refer to them as well. But keep in mind, we want to talk about who is doing a specific action when we talk about verbs and conjugation. Now, one thing you're already familiar with is the fact that verbs have different endings. And in Spanish, verbs are classified by 3 different types of endings. But we want to know what the ending is, and the ending happens to be the last 2 letters of the verb. So if we have the verb organizar, to organize, then we know that this is an AR verb because the last 2 letters in organizar are AR. Overall, there are 3 types of verbs in Spanish. We have AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. And you're familiar with each of these types so far this year, but the most common definitely are AR verbs. And that's what we're going to be working with today. Now today, the main idea is to conjugate an AR verb. Now conjugate is a very formal word, basically meaning we're going to change the verb to show who is doing the action. So instead of saying to run, we'll actually say she runs, or I run, you run, we run, they run. Depends on who you're talking about and who is doing the action. Now, to conjugate verbs in Spanish, it's a simple 2-step process. The first thing is to drop the ending, and we said the ending was the last 2 letters of the verb. So if we look at the verb hablar, we can see that the last 2 letters are AR. We want to drop those, get rid of them. What we're left with is called the stem. So if we've gotten rid of the AR, in hablar we are left with hablo, and that's our stem. If we look at the verb organizar, we get rid of our ending, which is AR, and we're left with our stem organiz. Same thing with tomar, get rid of the AR, and we're left with our stem tom. The second step is to add the appropriate ending to the stem based on who is doing the action. And we'll look at those endings in just a moment. Step 1, get rid of the last 2 letters of the verb, the AR, the ER, or the IR. In today's case, it'll be the AR. And then step 2 is add the correct ending based on who is doing the action. What you see here are the correct endings for AR verbs. Remember, you drop the last 2 letters, you're left with your stem, and now this is what we're going to add to the end of the stem to show who is doing the action. So let's say that I am doing the action. We know that the subject pronoun we use for I is yo, and the correct ending for an AR verb is o. What if you are doing the action, and you want to talk directly to somebody or maybe ask somebody a question? Well, the correct ending then is as. If we want to say he or she is doing something, we use a as our ending. Or if we want to say you formal, usted, that would also be a as the ending. If you want to say we do an action, that's you and somebody else, at least one other person, we use nosotros, and the correct ending for nosotros is amos. And if we want to say they do an action, or y'all do an action, then we would use the ending an. So those are the endings for AR verbs. O, as, a, amos, an. I want you to say that out loud. O, as, a, amos, an. And get that pattern stuck in your head. You'll remember from conjugating the verb ser and other verbs that we've learned so far that we have our subject pronouns, yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes, and these specific endings go with those subject pronouns. And it will help you to memorize o, as, a, amos, an. Now, to finish our conjugation, that is to give us the whole phrase saying who is doing the action, we simply take the stem of the verb and add the appropriate ending. So let's look at the verb hablar, to speak. And if we want to talk about ourselves speaking, for example, I speak, well, we drop the last two letters, the AR, get rid of that. We're left with habl, our stem. And if we are talking about ourselves, I speak, we know the correct ending for yo is o. So we add that to the end and we are left with hablo. Same thing with tú. If we wanted to say you speak, tú hablar, we would say tú hablas. We got rid of the AR and we added the correct ending for the to form. And this works with all AR verbs that are regular. They can all be conjugated that way. So it's a pattern. Try and memorize the pattern. O, as, a, amos, an. So let's look at one example here, and then I'll let you do some practice on your own. We have the verb hablar, to talk or to speak. Let's look at how we would conjugate it for each form, showing who is doing the action. I speak, yo hablo. You speak, tú hablas. He speaks, él habla. She speaks, ella habla. Usted, you formal, speak. Usted habla. We speak, nosotros hablamos. They speak, ellos or ellas hablan. And you all speak, ustedes hablan. Now you'll see at the bottom here, where you can see me highlighting right now, hablo means I speak. You don't have to put the yo in front. It's optional. Tú hablas, you speak. Again, you don't have to include the tú. It's optional. However, if we say habla, we need to include the él, ella, or the usted to remind ourselves that it's either he that is speaking or she, or maybe we're referring to usted, but you must include something there. Hablamos, you need either nosotros or nosotras. Hablan, they speak, you need either ellos or ellas, or maybe you're using ustedes, you need to include that as well. This is what it looks like to conjugate an entire verb depending on who's doing the action. So if I wanted to say we speak, you know you would go to the we form, and then you would go directly to hablamos, because amos is the correct ending in the we form. Same thing if you wanted to say you speak fast. Tú hablas rápido. We know we go to the to form, and the correct ending is as. So what I would like you to do right now is try some practice on your own. I've given you 4 different infinitive verbs. That means they're in their to form. Caminar, to walk. Comprar, to buy. Organizar, to organize. Nadar, to swim. What I would like you to do is to conjugate the verb. You can see up in the top left-hand corner that I've given you your verb conjugation chart with the endings, o, as, a, amos, an. Please use that if you need to help yourself conjugate the verbs. What I would like you to do is, on a piece of paper, is to conjugate each of these 4 verbs. Make sure you include, like I'm doing here, the correct subject pronoun. Now my writing's a little bit messy, but yours will be much better. But include on the outside, then, for each of those spots, the correct subject pronoun, and on the inside, you're going to include the correct conjugated verb for the form. So caminar, to walk. If we wanted to say I walk, it would be yo camino. Please try and conjugate each of the 4 verbs, and at this point, pause the video, give yourself a couple of minutes, try each one, and then you can see the answers on the next page. Don't look at the answers until you give this a shot. Also, at this point, if you need to go back and watch the section on how to conjugate a verb again, please do so. Again, please pause the video and double check your answers. Now, I have not included my subject pronouns on the outside. That's okay. If you need to check and see if you did the subject pronouns correctly, just go back to the beginning of the video and you can see them all right there for you. But double check each and every single verb, double check your spelling, and most importantly, check the ending, because we know the ending helps us distinguish who is actually doing the action. I'll run through the verb caminar with you, and then after that you can double check each of your own. So if we wanted to say to walk, we would say caminar. But if we wanted to say I walk, that would be yo camino. You walk, tú caminas. He or she walks, él, ella camina, or usted camina as well. We walk, caminamos. They walk, caminan, or that would also be you all walk, caminan. Please double check the rest of yours. If you need to go back and look at anything again before you do your assignment, please do so. Good luck, and if you need any help, you know how to get a hold of me. Adios.